Have you ever wondered how to emboss the entire front of your card base? Hi, I'm Jessica Taylor from Ink It Up with Jessica, and in this video, I'm going to show you two different ways that you can emboss a full card front. The first way is to create your card base and emboss just the front of it, like this. This will work with many dies, but some embossing folders with a heavy pattern will really warp the front of your card base, and so that'll be a little bit weird if you do it this way. I'd recommend using a lighter emboss pattern like these raindrops. And since these have an obvious up-down pattern, if you want them to look like rain, you're going to really need to think about which way to put your card front into your embossing folder. Here's what I mean. This piece I put in the wrong way, so it looks like the rain is falling up instead of falling down. So if this is my card base, which is 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, scored at 4.25 inches, and this is my card front, and I want the raindrops to be falling down, I want to find the side of my Stampin' Up! Embossing folder that has the Stampin' Up! Logo. That's going to be the front. And then I want to look at how my pattern is, and on this, you can see the raindrops are falling down this way, so I want them to be falling down on the front of my card base like this. So I will line up the edge of my folder, because this one, the design goes all the way to the edge, with the fold. So just kind of like so. And then sometimes I use this line here to line up the top edge of my cardstock too. This one doesn't matter so much, but you do want your raindrops to be falling straight down probably. Although I guess it doesn't matter, but if you're gonna go all the way to the fold, this is how you're gonna wanna put your cardstock card base into your folder. So now let me show you how you would run this through your machine. I'm using the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. So with this, I'm going to use the number 1 base plate. And because this is just a regular embossing folder, not a 3D folder, I'm going to use a number 3 plate on top of that. And then I want to put my folder in with the cardstock. Now, obviously, it's not going to fit through this way. Sometimes you can fold your card base around, but sometimes that gives you weird lines and things. So I find it easiest to run my folder through this way. Now, this is where you need to be very careful. When it comes to running through your folder kind of the normal way, I don't think it matters if you go open end first or fold end first. I think whatever your preference, it will work both ways. What you want to be careful with when you run it through this way is you don't want this folded end to rub up against your machine, because that can break the fold of your folder. So I want to make sure that my sandwich is pushed as far to this edge as I can. And that's just going to make sure that the fold of my folder isn't hitting anything and getting broken. Then I'll put another number 3 plate on top. Make sure everything is lined up nicely, because I do want to make sure that this edge of my cardstock gets embossed. So I want to make sure my plates are all the way underneath my cardstock. And then we'll just run this through. So now when I pull my cardstock out of my embossing folder, you'll see that the front of my card base is embossed. My raindrops are going the correct way. And so I can use this card base to make a cute card like this. The second way is to emboss a piece of 4.25 by 5.5 inch cardstock and then tape it onto the front of a card. This works better when you have a denser pattern that can warp your cardstock. That would be a lot of 3D embossing folders, especially with a really tight pattern like this cross weave or this crosshatch that I'm using. You can emboss any color cardstock you want for the front, and you could use the same color for the card base if you wanted to, but I like to use white on the inside of my cards because it's easier to write on and easier for the recipient to read your message. So I'm going to emboss a piece of Flirty Flamingo cardstock and then put it on a white card base. Again, this is 4.25 inches by 5.5 inches. I'm going to put it in my embossing folder. This is a crosshatch folder, so I just want to make sure it's fully in my folder. Once again, I'm using my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, so I'm going to start with the number 1 base plate. Then I'm going to put my folder down. Like I said, I think you can either go open end or closed end first. I don't think it matters. I always go open end. I've never ruined a folder. And then I'm going to put number 4 specialty plate on top of that because this is a 3D folder. And then we'll just run that through. Now I have my embossed piece of cardstock, and that's gonna fit right on the front of my card base. Again, my card bases, I make them so they are 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and then I score it 4.25 inches. And then to tape this on, sometimes if your measurements are a little off, you might see a little white peeking through. Normally, I don't care about that. You wanna just make sure that you are gluing this on as squarely as possible. I suggest using a really forgiving adhesive like the mono liquid glue because it doesn't dry instantly, so you have a little bit of time to move this piece around on your cardstock. I like to live a little bit dangerously, and I love the Stamp and Seal. So I go ahead and put some of that all around the outside. Put a little on the inside too if you want. And then I usually just kind of use my counter and my fingers to make sure that it's lined up on the card base. And when I kind of see that it is, then I will kind of rub all over it to make sure the adhesive is in place. And then once you have your card base like that, you're ready to decorate the front however you'd like. I used larger embossing folders for these cards, but if you want to emboss a full card front with a mini embossing folder, watch this video next for tips.